Marvel may make movies and shows about superheroes and gods, but they're all human at the end of the day and are prone to make the occasional mistake here and there. Well, everyone except for Chris Hemsworth, that is. You stay perfect, you golden-haired Adonis, you. Anyway, while the movies are epic, there are still a number of mistakes in the MCU, some of which are so small you have to be on the border of crazy and genius to catch them, but hey, I'm not one to judge. So let's take a look at some mistakes, shall we? First off the bat is the Eternals, which is the MCU version of Marmite. You either love it or you hate it.
I hate it.
I hate Marmite.
And a quick side note to the uninitiated, Marmite is a savory food spread made from yeast extract that tastes like liquid death. Love it or hate it, Eternals did cause a number of continuity issues, such as Kingo's remark that a young Thor used to follow him around and was besotted with him. This contradicts Thor's line in The Avengers, where he claims that his journey to Midgard in the movie Thor was his first time, saying, "When I first came to Earth, Loki's rage followed me here and your people paid the price." Now, Kingo might be lying here, but the likely story is that the writers underestimated us picking apart an offhand remark. Also, and I might be wrong here, but if Thanos is indeed an Eternal, his desire to destroy half of life in the universe would by proxy make him a deviant, meaning that the Eternals' excuse not to help out during Infinity War makes no sense. Especially when you take into account that the Celestials need a big population in order for them to be born, so Arishem not trying to stop Thanos beforehand doesn't make much sense to me. On top of all that, if Thor was aware of the Eternals, you'd have thought he would have tried to recruit them in the fight against Thanos, but hey, what do I know? I'm not Kevin Feige, or am I? Obviously not. I don't know why I said that. Alright, now let's ignore the post-Endgame timeline issues with Shang-Chi and focus on the movie's more nitpicky mistakes, because let's face it, they're more fun. During a scene where Shang-Chi and Katie joyride in a red BMW, Katie says she's the Asian Jeff Gordon, before saying he has the most career wins in all of NASCAR history.
I'm the Asian Jeff Gordon.
I don't know who that is.
Most career wins in all of NASCAR history?
Please get out of the car.
Now, if she was actually a NASCAR fan, or just did a quick Google search like I did, she would know that Jeff Gordon was actually third in the most wins leaderboard, behind David Pearson and the actual holder of most NASCAR wins, Richard Petty. Yeah, you're gonna need some aloe vera, Katie, because you've just been burned. Also, if you look very, very closely at around the 1 hour, 51 minutes and 2 second mark, you'll notice that the rings have disappeared off of Shang-Chi's arm. Guess they really are magic. The next one is admittedly a little bit contentious, but in episode 3 of Loki, Sylvie is unable to control or manipulate the God of Mischief's mind because it is too powerful, but that's not exactly true.
It won't work.
Why? Because you're a magician.
No, because my mind is too strong.
That's because, according to the Marvel website anyway, they said that his scepter, which housed the Mind Stone, was controlling his mind, saying, endowed with a scepter that acted as a mind control device, Loki could influence others. Without him knowing it, the scepter was also influencing him, fueling his hatred towards his brother Thor and the inhabitants of Earth. Now, admittedly, this could be down to the fact that the Mind Stone is much more effective than Sylvie's powers, or he wasn't even aware that he was under the influence. But you know what? I'm counting it as a mistake, and you can't stop me. Now, seeing as Paul Bettany isn't actually a purple android-human hybrid, he unsurprisingly needs a lot of makeup to play the role. But seeing as most of his body is covered, thankfully, it's only really his face and neck that get the treatment. However, an eagle-eyed fan noticed Bettany's real skin underneath, with an opening in his sleeve during a promo for the 3rd episode of WandaVision accidentally revealing Bettany's normal complexion. Moving on to Black Widow now, but keeping on with the continuity errors, at around 40 minutes and 10 seconds in the movie, Natasha and Yelena accidentally smash up the back left-hand side of a BMW, because BMW are apparently paying Disney a hefty wad of cash these days. But a few shots later, the damage has mysteriously vanished. Perhaps that's a new feature on BMW cars, a Wolverine-style healing factor. Which, by the way, reminds me, BMW, if you want to pay me a few million to advertise you subtly in these videos, just let me know. I'll give you an example later on. This next one goes out to all you Tolkien fans out there. In Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Bucky claims that he read The Hobbit when it came out in 1937, but Hang on while I push my glasses arrogantly up my nose. There we go. The Hobbit was only available in the UK at that time, with there only being a limited number of copies available, and it didn't make its way to the US until 1938. So yeah, don't you even try to out-nerd me, Bucky. That's literally the only thing I can beat you in. Another error comes in episode 3, where although the prison Zemo is incarcerated in is said to be in Berlin, all the badges on the uniforms are the crest for the city of Hamburg. But neither Berlin nor Hamburg are a match for the city of Munich, which happens to be the home of the finest luxury car makers in the world, BMW. Sheer driving pleasure. Moving on from me shamelessly trying to convince German car companies to pay me money, but staying on the subject of Germany.
All they do is sell cars and move on. There's no connection to the community, Ben. Don't do this.
You want some cars sold? We'll be there.
In Spider-Man Far From Home, Fury says that he and Maria Hill will travel to the Europol headquarters in Berlin, Germany, but it's actually located in The Hague, Netherlands. Unless, of course, in the MCU it got destroyed in one of those near apocalypses, which is admittedly entirely possible. Another mistake comes when Happy and the school group run into the Crown Jewels vault. But in the movie, they're actually running into the White Tower, not the Crown Jewels vault, which is in a separate building within the Tower of London.
Into the Crown Jewels vault! Go!
Also, if you were to fly from Amsterdam or the Netherlands in general to London, it's unlikely you'd enter over the Dorset coastline like they do in the movie, as it's completely on the other side of the country. You'd more likely enter via Harwich and the county of Essex, which gave us such cultural delights as Maggie Smith and The Only Way is Essex, both of which could not be further apart. Now, seeing as there is so much going on in Avengers Endgame, and it would have been a monumental task to work on it, it is no wonder that a few mistakes slipped into the final cut. And we're going to shamelessly ridicule them here. While confronting Thanos, Tony Stark's mustache changes during the conversation, there's a man seemingly frozen in time during the final battle, Doctor Strange can be seen with the Eye of Agamotto despite it being crushed by Thanos, Ant-Man is in two places at once at one point, while he hotwires the van and also fights a bad guy elsewhere. And in a wide shot of everyone returning through the portals, Cap's shield, which had been smashed to pieces by Thanos, was back in one piece. Well, I guess it must have one of those BMW/Wolverine-style healing abilities too.
We can sell these cars.
There you go.
Avengers Infinity War also has its fair share of continuity mistakes. For example, during the scene where Tony and Pepper walk through Central Park, the jacket wrapped around Tony's shoulder miraculously goes missing. Which, I mean, it could be nanotech, but yeah, unlikely. Another goof comes during the Nebula torture scene where Gamora suddenly goes see-through and you can see her mad Titan stepfather's body as he walks behind her. Nanotech again? Also, Peter's hair gets a noticeable touch-up during a conversation with his pseudo-father figure, Tony. Nanotech hair? Maybe. Moving on to Captain Marvel now, if you look closely during the scene where Captain Marvel is on the hood of Jan Rog's ship, you can see that the shape of the cockpit changes during shots. Also, the movie gave us 90s kids some pure nostalgia vibes with the use of old Windows tech, but the Windows ME recycle bin used in the movie wasn't released until 2000, 5 years after the movie is set. One of the funniest goofs in the MCU comes in Doctor Strange, as Stephen walks through a room full of bizarre artifacts. If you look at the right-hand side of the frame as the camera pans, you'll notice a member of the crew standing around in the background for some reason, apparently unaware that they were filming. Or maybe he was like Drax, and thought that if he stood still long enough, no one would be able to see him. Sorry, buddy. Afraid to say it didn't work. This next blunder is actually one the MCU surprisingly publicly acknowledged. At the beginning of Spider-Man Homecoming, a flashback shows Adrian Toomes and his crew cleaning up the wreckage from the Battle of New York in the Avengers before a title card reads 8 years later, and the rest of the movie kicks off. However, Homecoming takes place shortly after Civil War, which is only 4 years after the Battle of New York, meaning that flashback should also be 4 years prior to Homecoming, not 8, something which Marvel publicly admitted. Another mistake was actually brilliantly played off as improv by RDJ. As he gets up from his chair during his conversation in Peter's room, RDJ actually forgot his blocking and where to go next, so he just ran with it and decided to keep going, staying in character as he reminded his co-star to shift his leg off the bed. In Thor Ragnarok, the scene where their home is blown to smithereens is understandably a sad moment for the Asgardians. Well, all except one apparently. As they huddle together and look forlornly at their former homeworld, one extra can be seen looking at the camera for a majority of the shot. Maybe we should call him the Watcher. Speaking of the Watchers, what a weak transition. In the scene where Lee is talking to the Watchers in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, he refers to the time he was a delivery man in Captain America Civil War. Despite that movie coming out before Volume 2, in the timeline, it technically happens after the movie, meaning the comment doesn't make sense in said timeline. Director James Gunn owned up to the mistake, saying, "I screwed up, I wasn't thinking, but I'm gonna say that probably Stan Lee used the guise of a FedEx guy more than one time."
Yeah.
And finally, in Iron Man and the sequence where Tony is designing his Mark II suit, in the shot where he's sitting down at the computer, there's a mug seen upside down beside him. But in the biggest case of magic in the MCU, in the next shot, the mug is upright and has liquid in it. What kind of movie editing sorcery is this?